Hello, Starseeds. This is Oriah, and I am here with Al from London. I am the founder of United Starseed Connections group on Facebook, and Al has been one of the founding members from the beginning, and we've had nothing but so much fun talking about so many topics relating to our spiritual growth, our evolution, life in general, the state of affairs of the world, and it's just always such interesting conversation. So I asked him to be on the show so I can share with you all what I get the privilege of experiencing every time we talk. So here's Al, and you know what? We're just going to launch right in. I'm going to just start asking questions so you guys can all get to know him, just like I have. So welcome, Al. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Okay, so I want to jump right into your childhood because you were raised in a very unusual, kind of unusual way compared to, I guess, most people. So what was your childhood like?
Okay, so I was born in '84. So my parents were quite young, but also quite progressive. They were both followers of the Baha'i religion, which kind of essentially, to boil it back, believes in planetary oneness and all religions are a cycle of part of the greater cycle, so to speak. My dad's from Glasgow, my mum is from Tehran, and my mum's family had fled the revolution to the UK, became British citizens. Her and my dad met at a Baha'i conference in like 1982 or something, and then got married super young, had me, moved down to the middle of the English countryside from just outside of Glasgow, and it was a very bizarre place to grow up because you had this kind of otherworldly feel about it. It felt like you'd kind of wandered off some kind of spacecraft and you were observing the, these very small community of people like going about their lives in a way that felt very alien. I got some amazing friends there, but all of my friends, we were all the outsiders in our own way. So we kind of banded together. And
What
when
were
I was
the main principles of the Baha'i religion?
equality between all peoples, equality for men and women, equality for all race, and the right to education, the idea that all teachings are not delivered by a minister. Everything is, you have to read it for yourself. So the individual exploration of belief is what is encouraged, but in practice is a different story. But we won't necessarily go down that road. So the idea is that you talk with each other about the ideas and you move on that principle. And the interesting thing about the Baha'i faith versus all of the other Abrahamic faiths and sort of general religion that I know of is they believe in an ultimate, unknowable, infinite, absolute reality, as they call it, which is what they refer to as God. So that I find very interesting because that has the potential for a lot of overlap with different ideas. However, they kind of shun the ancient practices, and it was the ancient practices that I got really drawn to as a kid from when I can't remember when. I think energy work, healing work, psychic abilities, tarot, crystal work, Reiki, runes, all of this kind of stuff was fascinating to me from a very small age, but it was very discouraged. This was like the kind of the cigarettes and alcohol kind of vibe, like don't talk about that, it's not really something to go down to, but that was my path of deviation.
Mm-hmm. Al, why don't you share with us your full name, because I understand you have a very special name.
Okay, so my full name is Alastair Roshan Ballantyne, which is a mixture of Scottish and Iranian names. And the meaning of each name is Alastair means defender of men, Roshan means bringer of light, and the family name Ballantyne means from the fires of Baal. So we can infer from that what we
Fire
wish.
of Baal. So is that the Bahl? Baal? The
Yeah,
god from the King James Bible, Baal.
yeah. Or depending on if we want
Other
to.
works.
Yeah, that's it. And depending if we kind of want to go into the kind of the rabbit hole of secret societies and sacrificial worship, it's the same
Right.
deity and
Right.
so forth.
Wow.
So the the interesting thing there was I was very privileged to take part in a research trial on the National Health Service in England, where they were researching the effects of psychotherapy aided by psychedelic compounds.
Mm.
So I had in June 2019, I took part in this research trial, and one of the visions that I saw while I was under was of these two points of light floating across space, one coming towards the other, one of them being myself. And I met with the other one, and it comes together like fusing. It says, "Your name is Alastair Roshan Ballantyne. Your name is your responsibility on this earth. Take it seriously." And then it kind of whited out. And then the next thing I see are like these kind of hands coming in and being pulled out of the womb,
Mm.
because I was born by C-section.
So you get
And
to go back and witness your birth.
yeah,
That's fantastic.
it's kind of crazy, but cool at the same time.
Hmm.
And that's set quite a theme for the things that have happened. I've always found myself in situations that have maybe needed a bit of illumination, or something that needed readjustment, or just something that needed a bit more light bringing to it. So it kind of makes sense finding that out when I was 34, kind of looking back on the experiences that had happened over the years. So,
Well, one of the areas that I noticed that you and I have in common, and I think that's what drawn us together, is the idea of neutral, balanced, harmonious thinking, which is kind of the middle ground. Which, I know that there's not a lot of fans of people out there in the world that like to ascribe by that type of lifestyle. But for me, I love the view because you get to see all sides, you get to see both sides, and there's no judgment involved. So I know
yeah,
that you have the same experience, right?
that's it, 100%. Because we live in a very dualistic world. Everything is kind of designed to be in opposition to each other. And it gets pretty boring pretty quickly if that's how you live, because you're essentially herded from one thing to another thing, and the possibilities of finding anything close to a universal truth is impossible.
Mm.
And obviously, the only universal truth being that there is no universal truth. But at least to be able to entertain that search, the idea beyond duality has to be entertained, especially now as
Mm.
well, when everything's changing, domestically, nationally, internationally, and kind of conceptually.
Mhm.
If we are viewing that from a dualistic lens, we're just going to be at each other's throats and we won't learn anything.
Right.
Um, and there seems to be a trend of noticing things that are happening that have maybe been talked about in the whispers of
Right.
society and the larger manifestations, and saying, this is proof of this, this is proof of that. When, so what? If it is or it isn't, does it really matter?
Here's to that.
Yeah, exactly. What difference does it make to you or I, other than to just affirmation and confirmation to keep moving forwards in what we believe in?
That's so true. And it takes guts actually. You have to have some sort of inner stamina to know your own truth, to be able to stand in these winds of change, because you'll have the East and West, and you'll have them, they're big, currents. And when you're teaching what we teach, and when you're participating in society, and you have to speak a certain way that's really middle ground without making anyone wrong, that takes a lot of talent.
Hmm.
It's very skillful speaking, because you can very easily teach neutrality, and in that could be making someone wrong. And so the second you do that, you're out of the game. And that's the thing where I've spent the most amount of my time honing in on that. And it was such a fun relief to find that in you as well, that you had spent the majority of your life in this conversation and in and out of this conversation, right? You've had a lot of history understanding this.
Well, that's it, especially just kind of going back to the beginning of the family life of East and of West and the clash of ideas, and then growing up in a very, very right-wing, English-leaning part of the world and not being that way at all, and then kind of growing up in opposition to that, and then you come away from it, and then you have that moment where you realize, hang on, I've got nothing to oppose anymore, so I'm standing in opposition to myself, which in in that moment can be the most empowering thing through disempowerment, because suddenly you have to hang up the jacket that you've been wearing that is your story and put it on the peg and look at yourself
Woo!
for everything that is no longer there, so you can really see.
Wow.
And I find that quite fun, actually. And I don't know if the ethics of this, but I find that when I'm teaching stuff, because my background was in mainstream education, working as an arts teacher, mainly music and performing arts, and I found that I was always teaching the same thing, which was questions about philosophy, spirituality, the nature of reality, all this kind of stuff. This is what people wanted to know.
Art and music.
I know, right? So even if I'm covering like a maths lesson and it's
Right.
like I've got,
You're back
you know,
to cosmic.
yeah, I've got the work there for them to do, and they're like, "Sir, like, can you answer this? What does this mean?" And I look at it, and it's like some news article about history, and I'm like, "My God, can I not just get away from this for an hour?"
No, you can't.
So,
Yeah, once you take that red pill, or is it the blue pill, or
the red pill, isn't it? I
the
think.
red pill. Yeah. Well, it's really fun, and we joke when we do our little quick back and forth talks. We joke about this being sort of like it's almost like we're space travelers, or we're cadets, or like some 007 or some kind. It's really fun because you're kind of living in between the crack of life, where everybody's wanting to just take sides. They just have to take sides. It's like they're programmed. There's no choice in the matter. There's no emancipation from this. And
But that's it. You're absolutely right, and this is why I chose to wear this T-shirt today, because it is grey, and the path of grey that includes the light and the dark and everything in between on that spectrum. That's what interests me,
yeah,
particularly as a teacher, because if you can encourage people to identify their own grey path, then that's where the magic happens. That's where we meet innovation and imagination, and the envelope gets pushed. And the way that a hierarchical, patriarchal society has been organized for so long is through division and fear of the unknown, and fear turning into hatred. And I'm just not interested in all of that. It's a game of catch that someone throws me that ball, I'm just going to let it go,
I'll
you
never
know.
forget when I kind of came over to the middle ground. And I don't know if you've ever had this coming to God moment, but there was a time when I realized that I don't need to take sides. I could just be right down the middle. And I remember that I didn't have any language. There was no data that I could draw from, because I've never heard anybody be neutral around me. So if I wasn't being extreme and with extreme polarities, I didn't know how to speak. I had to actually learn a new dialect, a new language. I had to learn how to speak again. And it's funny because, I don't know how many years ago or decades, there was the war, and then they said that Switzerland was the middle, neutral country, and everyone made fun of them,
Hmm.
right? But do you know, to be neutral takes a great amount of stamina, because you're talking to people who are very forcefully wanting you to take a side.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of stamina. So people
That,
think neutrality is a weakness, or like you're in the middle ground, like you're not taking a stand, you don't have a strong backbone. I say it's the opposite.
no, 100%. My philosophy has always been, anyone that ever makes me choose, I will choose the thing that didn't make me choose. Um,
That's cute. I like that.
well, it was, I was 11 years old. My parents were separating. One parent asked, "Who do you want to live with?" And I immediately went, "Other parent." Why? Because you made me pick. And it's a true story.
Wow.
We're all we're all great together now. But I remember at the time I had this real fire come over me, like, how dare you make me make this impossible choice? You know, there's no there is no way that I would allow anyone to ever put me in that position again. And
Yeah.
living a sort of life in like professional arts and I've had to make a lot of sacrifices over the way. And there have been times where people have said, "Oh, well, it's me or that music," and I'm like, "Cool, I'm going to go pack my bags now and carry on with this adventure. And see you later. Good luck." Because again, it's trying to divide, divide, divide. It's not like a holographic reproduction where the hologram is perfectly reproduced in each instance. The division is always diminished, and if we're divided against ourselves, we cannot stand.
What
So
a great way of saying that. I might have to.
please,
That was a really good one. I'm always looking for ways to describe that. That's beautiful. What was I going to ask you? Can you tell me about your career life, like your not your music and art, but I'm talking about your spiritual quests. You know, the work that you do with humanity. Is there?
yeah,
It's developing, or you already have it? Is it already a produced career, or can you tell us some about it?
I can tell you everything about it with pleasure. In terms of it going official and being visible and going public, the lockdown was the thing that the light just went on, and I was like, right, okay, damn it, let's just do it now, because everything was channeled through art before.
Mhm.
Everything was channeled through art, was channeled through teaching, and I found myself, like I was saying, being asked the same questions all of the time. So at the start of the lockdown, we got about a fortnight in, and I thought, to hell with this, I'm just going to start helping people now. And I put together this course, and I ran it as a pilot group for 4 weeks. This is going to be an 8 week thing. But the whole idea was helping people begin to walk back from the edge of.
Wow.
So if we say the cliff edge
Yes.
is the pre programmed point where we're all at. So as I know that you work with people who are kind of on intermediate to advanced, I thought I'm going to go after the babies,
Yeah.
um, because it's just would be a better place for me to start to kind of cut my bones as a teacher, really.
Mhm.
Um, and I thought what we need is, because most of my Facebook connections are people involved in the arts and related industries, and everyone's like going, "Oh my God, what's going on?" I'm like, guys, can you not see that this is amazing?
Mhm.
This is exactly what we need. So the the whole program starts with identifying how you meet your needs. So with the Maslow pyramid, pulling that apart. Are you going into it consciously or unconsciously? What are the things that you like and dislike? How do they form barriers in your life?
Mhm.
Um, and then looking at how we can be malleable, because a lot of again, if we can kind of go back to the duality, there's a lot of the I am comes into that. I am a guitar player. I am a chartered accountant. I am a milkman. These things. Well, what happens when all of that just goes?
Right.
Who are you when you're not doing what you think you're supposed to be doing? Is the question
Mm.
that set me on that path to ask people.
Wow.
So from that, we would be taking them into how they see the world, so the perception of it. I'm going to come back to the plant medicine um, research trial in a moment, as this features heavily in the designing of this course, because psychedelic medicine, or entheogenic medicine, however we wish to refer to it as, is gaining a lot of traction. It's coming back into the mainstream, but in the right way. I think we're ready for it now. But
Yes.
there's a lot of people who will see it as drugs are drugs, this is bad.
Right.
So the
Hopefully they
thing
will
that,
soon.
oh yeah, of course, but still we have to be respectful of that if we're going to tread the grey path.
Right.
Um, I was interested in trying to take these reflections into a context that people that would never go near anything like that in their life could still benefit from these ideas.
Mhm.
And one of them was to do with perception. So the perception of the world. I think we spoke about this the first Zoom that we had in one of the welcome groups for the Starseed chat, and I was shown on the research trial about like the essentially the three different states of the world: red, blue, and green, and each three of them being a primary color of light, and the three of them being put together, making the white light, the purity of the, which is the amalgamation. So I saw this vision of the world being attached by this giant conduit up through to this big cloud sending down energy. The first energy pulse turned the planet red, and this is like if you imagine you open up your phone and you see the news and it's hate, fear, division, and then you're like, oh, and you take to Twitter and you're like, "Brr, brr," and then you post on Facebook, so, and you're putting it back out. You're in a tennis match. That's your red state. Your blue state is when you get it, bam, you look at it, but you're like, oh man, like I can't, oh no, just I'm gonna put my phone in the fridge. I'm gonna sell my computer. I'm gonna go live in a cave. I can't deal with this. So blue is the paralysis, and then green was like the lightning rod, where it comes down and out the other side, but transformed. And that was the time when I saw the world free of this influence. So the whole
Wow.
second part of the course was about translating that into an educational content so people can understand that the world isn't the problem. How they see the world dictates how they engage with the world, but how they see the world is based on all of the things that's going on in the inner, like how you meet your needs, your like and dislike triggers, how are you malleable in a different situation. And then we take them through to that into like transmuting excess energy, turning anxiety into hyper awareness. So we're starting to kind of tap into low level psychic intuitive abilities, which then takes them through into recasting the role of themselves in the movie of their life, using this content so they're not put in a supporting actor role when they should be the star.
Right.
So with that,
this is deep core work. And it's great because it starts at the beginning, like you said, and you're taking people through the shock phase without having to go into shock so much. You kind of walk them through that. It's very delicate about it.
That's it. It's like if you need to get the water boiling and you're starting from cold, you're going to turn it up very slowly, because if you turn it up too fast, whatever's in the water is going to jump out. And we take them through to understanding, like, work with Jung's archetype theory, the Myers-Briggs personality types, and then into essentially heavy creative visualization that they repeat every day for a month, because it's refining, and they're using the five senses, because the five senses is the language of the subconscious mind. So the whole thing ultimately is getting the conscious mind and the subconscious mind like that.
I have chills. This is such a great course. I love it. I would want to take your course just to watch you teach it.
Well, I need to run another pilot study, so please come.
Absolutely.
That would
this
be
is really, really good. And I'm a huge believer in art therapy, meditations, visual meditations. It got me through so many of the roughest patches I've had. Just, looking at art or drawing or painting, and that just told me everything I needed to know. It's very healing.
That's 100%, because there's such a perception. One of my favorite books all time, I keep it on my desk. I have a stack of books on my desk where I always sit when we do the Zooms, but this one, The Mission of Art by Alex Gray.
Oh, of course.
Do you have this?
I don't have it, but I know of this book. I know Alex Gray. I mean, I know of his work.
Please,
yes,
make sure you grab a copy of this for your library. This is, it's kind of like a call to arms for anyone who believes that creativity and spirituality and the expression of spirituality through any creative act are intrinsically linked. This book is just phenomenal. I tend to buy it for anyone and everyone on their like birthdays and stuff. So it's like, hey, have this. Everyone has that one book, don't they, that they always send to people.
I know which one mine is. It's Journey of the Souls. Journey of Souls.
Oh, really? The
Which you
the
got
one
that
that's
book and read it.
that's it. And I've also got the second one, Destiny of Souls, that I'm working my way through
Oh,
at the moment as well.
tell me how that one is because I haven't
Have you not got that one?
second one. Yeah.
Oh my God, it's
You
so good. It's so good. Yeah, it's so good. It's
can you give
you
me a little
have
tip of what you've read? Little highlight.
well, essentially, like it's written from the perspective that after he published Journey of Souls, loads of people read Journey of Souls and started writing to him,
Mhm.
and then he expanded the study. So it's he describes it as Journey and Destiny of the Souls as two trips up the same river. The first trip up the river is quite a reasonably quick A to B with Journey of Souls. With Destiny of Souls, he says this one we explore all the little side canals
Wow.
as we go up. So everything
Do you
it's
have the book there with you? Can you show the cover?
yeah. See, I'm being a good student here.
Yes. Oh, there we go.
There we go.
So, if you go on YouTube, there's an interview with Michael Newton, and I
Oh,
think
really?
he was in his 70s. He was so phenomenal. The way he was speaking was so coherent and so alert. And he was talking about death as if he's going to go visit an old friend. And he has
Mm,
all he knows he realized in his studies with these two books and these two big, long studies, I think it took many, many years. He realized the reason why he was involved as the person taking these tests. What would you call that? The case study manager or what would you
yeah.
call it?
Yeah, I think like kind of like yeah, definitely the case
Right.
study manager or the
Exactly. So he realized the reason why is because in this lifetime he needed to make peace with death. And this brought him such tremendous peace. These two books and this study that it changed his whole outlook on life, and he was looking forward to dying now, and he knew exactly what he was going to experience and expect. I mean, it was, and just to hear him talk about it, his eyes are so bright. He's in his 70s. It was so beautiful. So you have
I,
to watch that
I
video.
would love to check that out.
Yeah.
My partner has to have an early night on a Monday, so I usually stay up late watching stuff. So maybe that'll be
That's
tonight's thing. It's fascinating though. Like, can we just talk about that book for a minute? Is
yes.
that okay?
Yeah.
Like,
I would love.
um, I I feel like it's given me such a sense of perspective on everything, you know. And I did the when I did the channeling circle with your husband Riz, and the message that I got there saying that I'd come here to understand the nature of reality.
Right.
And I thought, okay, this is quite interesting because I'm reading these books at the moment, and I feel that I'm a very heart-driven person, and I have a lot of compassion. But I found that my compassion would be conditional
Hmm.
sometimes, in that I have people who are doing their own work and are aware of things or are making steps to move towards things. Or there's an awareness. Awareness was the key. Then I would have endless compassion. But then if I saw people doing like the same thing over and over again, I would just be like, dude, like I don't want to know.
Right.
And the, the whole idea of like the nature of reality being tied to what you feel, and this idea of us coming here to learn lessons, it kind of made sense when we did the heart circle as well.
Right.
Um, I sorry, I'm going in deep here.
I love
um,
going.
I understood that part of why I was here in this life now, in terms of my personal lessons, was to learn compassion that is boundless
Mm.
and find ways to engage with people differently that were maybe struggling, that
Right.
didn't necessarily know how to unpick themselves from the struggle that they were presented with at the time.
And I find it very challenging when you are learning how to do that. You yourself are also going through compassion of the self as you yourself are learning and surrendering and growing and evolving. And so you have not only that going on, but then you also are keeping the compassion for humanity going very alive and well. So between the two, it's a very full house when you're in this multi-dimensional reality and you're taking care of yourself and you're taking care of others and you're breathing from like your male and your female and you're just totally in your, it's full of self-expression completely.
That's it, because we can, I mean, how many of us have fallen into the trap of the wounded healer?
Yes. Oh gosh, I started there. I
Me
started
too.
in that path. That's a hard one.
So we can kind of divert around that avenue,
Yeah.
but I think it's good to acknowledge, isn't it, that those of us who are drawn to the healing practices in some way, shape, or form have experienced a very deep instance or instances of transformational pain,
Mhm.
and the compassion for the self is something that we're not maybe led towards or encouraged to explore for one reason or another. And
I think I know why. It's
why is
because
that?
nobody really, really knows how to do it. That's why they can't teach it. Because it is the final fire. It's the final walking through the final fire to surrender the self in its pain body and fear body and
Mm.
totally move past that and transcend and then teach it. Good luck. That's the 0.001% of the population.
If we could crack that code, we would be laughing. Well,
Right.
everyone would be laughing because you just
Well,
put. I.
you and I laugh a lot. So we understand some of this already.
I. Well, it's interesting. When they describe the regressions into the spirit world in those books, they talk about how everything is surrounded by laughter and joy and pranks and silliness.
Yes,
And to me, that just seems so natural,
so natural.
because if you can retain that, you can talk about anything, because it's very disarming, isn't it?
Yes. Well, you stay loose. And when you stay loose and you're not rigid, then anything can flow in and out of you and you are flexible. So it's a great modality in any area, from art
Hmm.
to music to martial arts to learning how to sail a boat. You have to have this, stamina, but then flexibility and ease and flow. So you're not rigid. It's hard sometimes to let go of some stories, right? So when we're letting
Yeah.
go of our stories, you can see that we have a death grip on it. So if you keep building this like sense of humor and learning how to make fun of yourself, poke fun and like keep things light, it gets easier to unlock some of these very heavy, heavy chains that we all carry.
Hmm.
So it's a work in progress, isn't it? I mean, I'm never to the finish line. I don't know. Does this ever happen? Maybe when we cross over, do we,
I
does
don't, I,
it never end?
I don't know. I mean, it's very interesting because like I tend to get quite a lot of visualizations, just generally, but even more so recent year, 2 years, and I see a lot of this stuff as sandbags, and we're like the hot air balloon, and as the hot air balloon rises, you're putting the sandbags over the side. But I guess you need to keep some of the sandbags on there because you just keep going, wouldn't you? Like,
Yeah, and then what happens?
we've run out of
You
air.
know, I always talk about when you're ascending and you feel like your crown chakra is blowing open and you're just going up, up, up and away. If you are activating your first and second chakra and keeping yourself very grounded to sensuality and to your environment and to receiving and letting Gaia inform your being, then
Mm.
not only are you going up, but you're also going down at the same time. And I'm always talking about that because that's so important. Um, yeah, you can't have one without the other. So many people I see like to take this road.
Mm.
It's fun for them, or they just go on this road, right? But to do both at once, you have to have a lot of understanding and grace with yourself, and lots of, I guess you would say, peace, even though that comes with this understanding. Peace is a byproduct
Yeah,
of learning how to do this. I guess it would come. I guess the best way to achieve that is through stillness. Would you say?
I would agree, because then you are able to connect with the external force and the higher parts of yourself, and the silly little reflections, and we aren't encouraged to have that in 2020.
Mhm.
There's noise everywhere. There's the hum of the place we live. There's the constantly going off phone. There's things wanting our attention. We don't necessarily have a separation between work and home. We have our social responsibilities, our familial responsibilities, we're like chilling out, we've got an animal comes up to us and wants our attention, which all of this stuff is wonderful, but we do need to have that stillness. But I worry that, like you say, when we go all the way down, we end up in the cave. We go all the way up, we end up in the stratosphere, and we're disconnected. It's like being in the binary again, apart from instead of left to right, we've just done a 90-degree and it's up and down. You know, the whole thing of the oppositional duality of everything just comes back again, and we see it. And like you're saying, if we can maintain the connection with the lower and the higher at once, we're in the middle zone again.
Yes, and I believe that's the solar plexus, right? And so this area of your body is like, it's the place, it's right under your rib cage, correct? I'm pretty sure it's right under
Yeah.
here. And this is the area where most people forget it even exists. And they never remember it, they don't think about it. And but yet when it's activated, you'll know, because this is your driving force. It's not coming from surviving, it's not coming from extremism or, like poverty consciousness or anything like
Mm.
that. It's just you're coming from your core, and it's a simplicity that's involved. So it's very instinctual. So you feel like it's time to drink some water, it's time to take a nap, it's time to go get some food, it's time to put some music on. It's just it's simple codes that you can hear that are coming through in and out through your solar plexus.
Mm.
I wish I knew more about the solar plexus, but I just intuitively know. I haven't studied tremendously on this area because it's a new area for me as well.
Hey, I come from the school that intuition is as valid as a degree.
Yes.
Um, because we did I did a broadcast last night with some friends. We were talking about very kind of esoteric stances on what's happening right now, and we were all saying, well, none of us are experts, and I'm like, that's the point. This is, we normalize the conversation with regular people talking about consciousness, and that is how we break out of everything. The solar plexus is quite an interesting one though, because I get a lot of visualizations. So the yellow colored one, isn't it, for the chakras? I see it a lot, like when my eyes are closed, I see it constantly just kind of light filtering out from there, you know.
Isn't this the quietest of all the voices within us? It's the quiet voice, the one you would have to be the most still to hear.
I think so.
Feeling I get. Because
Uh,
it's the one that is listening the most intently, I think, to your very instructions. Any instructions you give to the body, your solar plexus is receiving this data and decides, okay, what to do next. This is what's next. This is how we move. This is where we're moving from here to here.
hmm.
It's amazing.
I think so. And I mean, mine's calmed down recently, but then that's just because my life has calmed down recently. But before, it was very much about instinct and wit and guile and maxing out situations that seemed like there was a very small margin for success, and then expanding that angle. And it was that, the influence of that center, I would say, that got me through all of that. So it's very interesting that it's come up today. So
Oh yeah, believe me, there's things you've said that I'm like, oh my God. There's little pings when you talk, you don't know because we're psychic, so we're giving each other messages as we speak. Oh my gosh, yes. So yeah, when you sing, you're coming from the diaphragm, so it's coming here from here as well. When you breathe all the way in, it's coming from here as well. So I think what I'm going to be spending most of my studies, and I'm going to be focusing more and more and more on this energy here, on this light and this feeling, the frequency. Maybe I could even look into crystals to see which crystals are good for this area. I'm gonna
yeah,
do,
that would be interesting, I think.
yeah.
My knowledge of crystals is not amazing. We
Yeah,
have a fair
neither am I.
we have a fair selection, but I'm not a deep practitioner
Mhm.
myself, but that's something I want to change.
I had one crystal experience I'll never forget is I had a selenite stick. It's like a little wand. And I was going through my healing process. I was laying in bed and something told me to just lay it on my forehead right here, right on my third eye. And I fell asleep. When I woke up, oh my God, it was on fire. I took it off. I thought I damaged myself. I thought I was actually like hurt. I couldn't even believe it. So I knew in that moment the electromagnetic frequencies and the communication, this is a device. I knew in that moment. There's no way this simple crystal that just carries this, energy is not doing something.
Well, it's like we're kind of teetering into like talking about like the 0 point field and like orgone energy as well and all this
Yes.
kind of stuff, which is kind of that is holding a lot of interest to me because to me that seems like that's the future.
Yeah, I'd
Um,
like to know more about orgone energy now. Isn't that the EMF blockers, the coils? Is that the name?
yeah, I got a couple of these, which I can't really see.
Yes.
They're actually necklaces, but the
Yeah.
necklace
I was
was
gonna
kind of
say, yeah.
kind of badly made, so now I just kind of put it in my pocket. But when I first bought it, I put it on and I felt like this kind of like this field come up around my chest, and the whole one of the beasts that I have to bear, like any creative person, is a very fast mind, which obviously a fast mind misdirected becomes the unruly beast that is anxiety.
Mm.
And the orgonite necklace, it was like someone just took that dial and just went all the way down, all the way
Wow.
down. And I can't describe it in any other way than feeling, which
Is
is
that is
fascinating.
that a copper wire inside of that? Maybe you can
Yeah,
show. Can you put it on the camera again?
yeah, 1 second. So I've got the
Okay,
copper
so
wire
that's
there.
copper wire. And so copper is a great conduit, but it's also known to reverse viruses and different types of bacteria. It sends them away, actually. And that's why
Hmm.
we have copper pipes, right, in our housing. Um, I don't know if we still are using that, but at least that's what most houses have. And
Yeah,
it's this idea that copper can, I don't want to say cure you, but it does do some sort of reverse osmosis of some kind, right?
yeah. We'll have to put a little disclaimer on this video, won't
Disclaimer.
we? Like, these are just opinions, like
Just
kind of thing.
opinions.
No, but it's true because if you look at if we go the way back, there's someone I'm quite interested in, Billy Carson with his forbidden knowledge. That guy, he does a lot of research with the Anunnaki and the Egyptians and all of this hidden knowledge, and he's done like translations of the Emerald tablets and everything. And one of the healing mixtures that the Anunnaki were said to use, the the creator gods from the sky, just for those who aren't
A quick
up to speed on that. We took a
example.
real right angle there, didn't we?
Right.
um,
We just
but
took a quick laugh. Right. Yeah.
they would use like colloidal silver, monatomic gold, this kind of stuff to really like boost the immune stuff. And you should see Billy Carson. The dude's like 66 or something. He looks like he's 35.
Yeah, I've seen him. He's like a bodybuilder. Yeah.
You
He's
know,
probably
so
the only person in his field that looks like that. Yeah,
yeah, I think so.
I'd like to get deeper into the Anunnaki. I had a little bit of a negative experience with the Anunnaki one time when I was channeling, because I have trance channeled for many years off and on. And recently I've stopped for the last few years, kind of taking a break. And I had an experience with having the Anunnaki. Sometimes I'll have a walk-in or a visitor who will step into the body that was not really welcomed,
Yeah,
and they decided to just go for a joyride. And sometimes I don't know they're there, and I don't know until like Riz will tell me. That was during the time when the doors were open for that kind of communication. So they came in and took residence, and what they do is they access your actual, your data files, so your brain. And so it sounds like you're speaking like you would, so you can't really detect them. But from what my husband was saying, is my eyes were different, my tone was different, how I was speaking, where I was coming from was totally not human.
mm,
And he tuned in and he asked them, and they said they were Anunnaki. But my experience of them, and they were hosted for a couple days. That was way too long, but I had a hard time getting them out because they are from our building blocks of DNA.
They know how we work.
It was really hard to remove them. But what the experience I had was they were very there was like a sarcasm in their tone, kind of like they were making fun of Earth, like Earth was this small, minuscule little, like boring type of like, why are you even bothering? And I don't know if maybe there could have been maybe reptilian in disguise as Anunnaki, or if it was Anunnaki, but there's good and bad, I guess they say, from both.
Yeah.
But it was just a very interesting experience. I had a deep respect for them afterwards because I couldn't get them out. But everything coming out of my mouth, I wish I would have recorded it. Everything that I was saying was very lowbrow, very witty. But they were talking to like earthlings and humans, like we were just like the most ridiculous, boring, like kind of a waste of energy. And I thought it was really fascinating. Have you heard of this or this type of belief from them?
Yes, I have. However, with everything, there is factions.
Yep.
And screw it, let's go there.
Let's jump in.
When there's kind of like, again, like we were talking, were we talking or were you talking about it? I think this might have been in one of your videos I was watching when you were talking about the representations of the Trinity in tradition after tradition. And with the Anuna, if we're saying like Sumerian pagan stance, Anu, Enki, Enlil, and within that, I mean, Anu being the Heavenly Father, Enlil being the Lord of the skies, Enki being the Lord of the underworld. And within that trinity itself, the station of each of Enki and Enlil being in opposition to each other at the time. This is I was, you know what, I said to myself, yeah, I'm gonna play this cool today. I'm gonna like not chat like too. I'm not gonna push the boat out too weird because hopefully we'll do this again. But now here we are. I'm gonna go into the. I'm gonna go as deep.
Never an Al.
I know what we've just created this very inviting space, haven't we, to have this kind of conversation. So essentially, Anu being referred to in the text as the Heavenly Father, we can compare him to the biblical God of the Old Testament, and Enki being depicted in many forms of art as the serpent, and Enlil essentially was the Lord of Earth. So we
and the serpent represents the DNA strand, right?
That's it. And Enki is the one who essentially recoded the humans' DNA to make the humans. But the thing is Enki was a friend to the humans, whereas Enlil was just kind of like, what are you doing? The humans were created to serve. So there's this kind of very factionalized thing. I have had both direct contact experience with Enki and Enlil. Which is something that was a bit like, you know, I had to be completely open for this. Enki, I realized, had been with me my entire life and was guiding my creative work, because whenever I made music, it always came from somewhere. I would just pick it up and it happens. I could turn my hand to many things without too much explanation, and much to the annoyance of others. And when I went on that research trial, I saw Enki, and he was the one saying that it's all about creating and transmuting, and he was essentially referred to as the magician. And Enki has appeared, in other traditions, for example, Quetzalcoatl in Mesoamerica,
right.
Osiris in Egypt, and his thing is about being a friend to the humans. So, for example, in Sumer, Enki taught the women the language of the high priestesses, the high priests, sorry. because his view was that women bear the child, they are equally, if not more important than the men. So we will encourage this. Whereas the Enlilite faction of thought um, was very patriarchal and very repressive of this. And then, of course, as you get down into this, it goes splits even further and all of that. And the kind of the final battle between these two influences, I believe, off the top of my head, is essentially the tale of Sodom and Gomorrah and how they were destroyed, and then the establishment of the kingdom of Babylon by Enki's son Marduk, who proclaimed himself as Ra in Egypt. So here we go. We're going way off the end here, aren't we?
The thing is, it could quite possibly be that all of these beings that we're speaking of right now, they're all very advanced star seeds from like millennia ahead of us, and they take the godlike form because they have that kind of information. So
I believe that personally, which is why I can't go back to religion anymore.
you just don't take it far enough, they don't go all the way.
Well, this is it, and it's kind of, as a big Star Trek fan, I'm like, well, they're violating the prime directive of the non-interference with the pre-warp society, masquerading as gods.
Somebody says the word Star Trek, I have to say, I was on that show, right?
No, please tell me.
So I was on Star Trek Voyager. The episode was called Blood, Sweat, and Blood and Tears, and it was oh gosh, I bet I could look it up. I'll look it up. I'll post it later. But anyway,
that's so cool.
So listen to the character I played. I was a Starfleet engineer, but I was a hologram, and I worked for for our community or whatever, the ship. And my role was with other holograms like myself. We were to fight the Romulans. And what made us unique and special was the Romulans had implanted a chip that would allow us to feel real blood and tears in the battle. So they got kicks out of that. Like, they thought that was great. So I was the first one to walk into the holo bay and sit on the little medicine table, and the doctor came up to me and I made a sound because it was painful. And I thought, how symbolic all these years later, right? Just think about what I just said, and just think about the symbol. The fact that I was in that, I mean, it just is beyond.
You're obviously like your cool points in my book have just gone like
I was 24, and then Lucille Ball, who is one of my great mentor heroes that I love, she was the executive producer of the first Star Trek. She was the first one to greenlight it when no one else would touch it.
We have her to thank for this very inspirational 50-odd years of TV and films.
Lots of channeled material has come through.
Well, that's it, isn't it? Because again, kind of looking at it with a lens to what you're just saying with like the Anunnaki and the kind of the idea of this sort of mixture of malevolent and benevolent. Because for me, like, to sort of come back, like we're going to kind of ping back and then we're going to go forward. The whole idea with Enki is he was like, you need to teach the people to create, and create is the whole thing. This is it, right? And he was kind of presented himself to me like the hermit of the tarot cards, this mystic, inviting me into his mud hut for a cup of tea. And Enlil was all sat up on the clouds, not really paying much interest to me. And then at Christmas time, I'd been like kind of furthering my studies of watching loads of stuff, reading stuff about the ancient gods, and on Boxing Day we were at my partner's family in Yorkshire in the UK, and I was sat up in the room that we were staying in by myself, and when I saw Enlil the first time, it was as if Enki just kind of opened the curtain and just goes, "Don't forget about him." And it was this most majestic, colourful, resplendent being I'd ever seen, sat on this throne on top of a pillar. right high up in the clouds. Just, you know, bear in mind this is back in the summer. And then I was sat in the bed. We were going to go out like a very short while after this, and I started to feel really like unsettled, and then I had kind of this flash in my mind's eye, and I saw the pillar and the clouds and everything, and the pillar was kind of rotating and moving, and I was like, "What the hell? So what is this? You know, is this? Am I still hungover or something? Like, what the hell's going on?" And it came back, but like stronger, and I could see that the pillar was rotating down, and it was like coming down towards me, and then he was with me throughout the car journey, and then when we were walking, and essentially this was like the god of humanity speaking to me directly,
Wow.
saying that it's you have your work, because I was working with this project at the time that was all about community building and broadcast, which I've left a few months ago, but it was saying your responsibility is with this kind of initiative to help connect and bring people closer together, because we need it now more than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And I had said, like, in, you know, because it's telepathic communication, I was like, well, what about, you know, the Baha'i faith? Why did I choose to come to a Baha'i family? And I said, well, because the revelation of Baha, as it's called, is only for 1,000 years, and in that time it gives people an opportunity to kind of fast track, so they don't have to have as many lives, so the soul can come up very quickly.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, that's cool, because I was thinking there's all this stuff going through my mind. And then he said, like, are you happy? Do you willing to serve? And I thought, well, hang on a minute, mate. Like, you know, a bit kind of, you know, my sort of Han Solo approach to, like, hang on a second here. And he was like, no, you do want to serve. And I felt in my legs, it was as if he just pressed my body so I would kneel right there in the mud in the middle of this park on Boxing Day. Like, and I was like, okay, yeah, let's do this. And
Oh.
I've been reading lots of stuff, because in terms of like the internet, it is as wonderful as it is destructive.
Mm-hmm.
And the minute you kind of go off the beaten path in the spirituality world, you get into the whole kind of everyone's freaking out about secret societies and lizards and all of this crap that, you know, I just don't have any interest in. And inevitably, the
Well, because
Anunnaki
can I tell
gets,
you, it's because it doesn't go anywhere.
yeah,
It
what's
just,
the point?
yeah, you follow that trail and you'll end up right where we are right now.
To me, it's no different than a bunch of people just drinking a crap load of whiskey on a Saturday night, and that's their world. You know, it's kind of that's their thing. It's like I'm not interested in that thing. I'm interested in the new thing. So I'm not going to pay the old thing any attention.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't pay it attention, it doesn't have power. Um,
That's the key.
so, you know, and a lot of people go, no, Anunnaki bad. Just as a blanket statement. Sorry, I have to let the cat in. I don't know if you can hear him. He's freaking out.
It's okay.
Come on, mate. Are you just going to stand? Look, dude, this is important. Come on.
My cat sounds exactly the same meow. Very loud when she wants to come in.
Yeah, this is Murray. He's a higher being in a cat's body. I think he's
Does
just chosen.
Murray want to be a part of the conversation?
I don't know. He's just chilling on the bed. He's okay. So we kind of ping this forward to the Star Trek influence, and it's like the difference between the Vulcans and the Romulans, because essentially the Vulcans and the Romulans are two factions of the same ancestral race.
Right.
So we can be disruptive or we can be detached. We kind of be in the middle somewhere. So I find it very interesting because, like you were saying, with a lot of channeled material coming through for Star Trek,
Yes.
this
is a part of the desensitization. I can never say that word, but in a good way. So not the kind where we're trying to get mind control, but the kind where we're trying to warm us up to the powers that be. And they're just kind of making it soft for us so we can get used to the idea, so we can slowly integrate it into our society without much fanfare, hopefully. So, but this was very intentional. Star Trek was very intentional. There's a lot of films especially coming out recently in the last 10 years that are very channeled, and some older good ones on the United Starseed Connections group. As you know, I have a post dedicated only to movies, and everybody's been loading it up with all the top movies that have been channeled. What do you think? Did you ever see the movie called What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams?
Only the one time.
You
I want
remember
to
it?
go back. Yeah, I do. It just, I remember it emotionally moved me to a point that it took me a couple of weeks to kind of stop vibrating.
Me too. I saw it many, many times. Robin Williams has turned out to be one of my guides now. I took it very hard. I felt like he was a family member. I felt very close to him. I loved him like a family member. So when he
Mm.
died, I went down for a couple weeks. I held a vigil here in my house for him, and it was a big deal. And whew, I have relived a lot of his movies, but he had he has channeled a couple times through my husband recently, and not like trance channeled, but given messages to me. One of his messages was, whenever he thought that he was being funny, people took him seriously, and then whenever he was trying to be serious, people thought he was being funny.
I mean, that's perfect.
He said,
That's
"Don't even
absolutely
bother."
perfect.
He said, "Don't even bother. Just just be yourself, because they're not going to get it anyway." And I had to just, it's so true. It's so true. When you're being serious and you really want them to take you seriously, they make fun of you. And when you're being lighthearted and silly, they take you serious.
I've always had this problem.
Yeah,
Always.
yeah.
I went into doing kind of surrealist comedy for a bit, so I was like, maybe I should do this because we're kind of like making people laugh, and then you try and be funny, and everyone's kind of like,
What are you doing? Yeah.
You're
It's
going
when
to
you're being,
finish now."
yeah, it's when you're being yourself. People have been talking recently online. I think this is interesting, and I wanted your take on it. People have been talking about the idea of humans being battery packs, like we're batteries that are charging up the planet. I have some of my own thoughts about that, but I would love to hear. I think the movie The Matrix they depicted that. But what do you think
There,
about
there is two angles that I would like to take on this, if you would allow me. The
that? Yeah.
first one, yes, being the Matrix angle, but that feeding into the second one, which is I'm a student of J.G. Bennett and Gurdjieff, and they believe that humans' function is to produce food for higher beings, higher dimensional beings. Not as in actually they're going to come and eat us, like, but as in the energy that we give off is a sustenance to these higher forces. So the whole practice, their whole practice of fourth way spirituality, or the work as it's called, is that you do the work on yourself to achieve the highest possible level of consciousness that you can,
Mhm.
therefore changing the kind of food that you produce. And I thought that there was a lot of weight in that, because I would look at the people around me and I thought, like, people who are kind of like consumed by certain things, they seem to get more energy to get consumed by these things.
Hmm.
It was just like, if someone's really into like negative dark stuff, it was like they would have a real voracious appetite for negative dark stuff. And I'm
Right.
like, how can you just consume? How can you live and breathe it? Like, I can't.
Right.
Ugh. But then, like, people who are like into like light stuff, they would get more kind of like, more catalyst, or you try and have people breaking free from one to the other. And this idea of like humans being batteries is a fascinating one to me, because I think the Matrix put it well in terms of, you want to sit Joe Public down in front of the cinema screen and show them what the freak show's all about in the most literal way. The Matrix is probably the best film to do that, because you don't need to have to entertain any kind of esoteric ambitions to get
Did
a
you
kick out of that movie.
did you also get a feeling when that scene came up, when everyone was hanging in the pods and the first time we got to see the humans? What was the feeling that you got? Because I remember exactly how I felt that day when I saw that. I mean, I have
I
to
was
admit, it was really scary to me the way
I
they.
was freaked out because I went to the cinema with my dad to see it. So it was what, 99 was it?
That
99,
was way back.
98. So I'd have been like 14, 15.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, that's horrible, you know.
Yeah.
But how mad is it that they say that the Matrix was set up to represent the late 90s, as that's when human society was at its peak? And if we look at everything that happened since 2001, we have become slave to our lower impulses and natures as a society, not necessarily individually. It's like kind of, I imagine you like an apple cider press coming down, everything's like that, and some of it's just popping up out of the top, but the most of it flattened down into this pulp. It's nothing. The 90s was a very optimistic time, very, there was a lot of light, a lot of joy, but then, of course, all of this crap that's been going on that's coming to light now
It's
was,
all hidden.
yeah, it's just all hidden. So maybe it's a false light. I don't know. But that moment when he wakes up and he sees himself, all the wires attached to him and his head shaven, and
Right.
I feel like that is when you reach enlightenment. And the idea, have you seen The Midnight Gospel on Netflix?
No, I haven't.
Please watch The Midnight Gospel. You were going to love it. Because it's a cartoon that essentially is animated interviews, and they're talking about some fascinating things. And the third episode is essentially the premise of it is the main character Clancy has a machine that simulates parallel universes, and he programs in where he wants to go, and he puts his head in the machine, and he has his avatar, and his avatar comes down, and then he meets a character or a couple of characters, and they have a conversation for about 25 minutes in this really mad situation, and the whole thing's just animated. And in the third episode, he's talking with someone who is a practitioner of magic, obviously magic with a K, and they're talking about enlightenment, and enlightenment being the first stage, not the last stage. And that's, essentially like going towards building like the solar body where we can have that immortality in the spirit world. We don't get retransmuted, and the idea of the Tibetan rainbow body and the light body, all this kind of stuff, on a Netflix cartoon.
I definitely will watch it. And going back to the Matrix, there was a line that one of the characters that was born on the ship said, and it always repeats in my head all the time, all these years. The way he looked over at Keanu Reeves, and he was so bright, and he said, I'm 100% homegrown human being born right here on this ship." Do you remember that scene?
Yeah, I remember that.
That was my favorite line. I wanted to know the entire ins and outs of that statement. And I had set out to discover that. My whole life has been dedicated to understanding what does that mean to go back to your originating source files, your originating, when you're born, you're a clean swipe, clean the whole filing system out, keep the good stuff, but like still, just really
That's
truth.
a very interesting angle, because that taps in directly to one of the fundamental things of my course, which is to assume innocence, but from a context of experience. So
Both of that, yeah.
How can we essentially going back to the source? I love the work of Wayne Dyer.
Yes.
And his first book, if you got that, Your Erroneous Zones, the first one he ever did. And that one, it doesn't have any of the spirituality stuff in it. It's just pure psychology. And he talks about our natural state of being is being joyful and being curious. But then over time, we're kind of, that spectrum is brought in, to then like being like a Shire horse with the blinkers on. And we go through life with this very narrow perspective,
and you can't breathe, and you're constricted, and you start getting sick.
That's it. Just like in 2020, the corona and not being able to breathe, and all of the weight that statement itself now comes with across the cultural lexicon and these conversations that are opening up. It's like, hang on, maybe it's our God-given right for all of us to be able to breathe,
Hmm.
you know, and
And take the pressure off of us. There was so much pressure on everyone, don't you think?
that's it. I mean, do you want to go back to the way things were?
Nope.
Me
Not at
neither.
all. And the beauty of it is that it's impossible now. I've been really studying the trends and understanding where things are going on a metaphysical and multidimensional level. And my husband asks me sometimes, so where do you think things are going in 6 months and 9 months and a year? And I could project all the way out. It's very detailed. But what I see is that there is no going back. This is guaranteed 100%. This is a truly remarkable phenomenon because we are literally experiencing a transmutation right now. And
Mm.
there's no banking system that's going to go back to the way it was. And there's no real estate companies that are going to go back to exactly the way they were. Schools, education, healthcare, all of it. It's just impossible. It's impossible.
That's
It's too backlogged now, and it's too national security, national crisis. There's too many human rights questions involved. It's gone so far beyond. The
uh,
old standards have to change. Like even the
this is
credit reporting system. Think about the credit reporting system is
yeah.
based on you paying on time every 30 days. Well, how can that happen if no one can work? So now everyone's experiencing, problems with the credit reporting system. Now their credit scores are dropping because they can't keep up their normal payments. So do you think that we're going to be tolerating a life where we all just swallow it and just suffer together and say, oh, okay, I guess we're screwed? Or is there going to be an uprising in commerce where we communicate to the corporations that you guys are going to have to adjust and change
Mm.
your status quo of how you do things? You can't just continue going on the way it was.
100%. I mean, we're living through transformation, and essentially, like there is a Baha'i saying, as if this transportation is like fire, and we talk a lot about walking through the fire. But the
Mm-hmm.
Baha'i saying is like, with the fire we test our gold, and with the gold we test our servants. And I take that one step further in the thinking, in that anything that is of gold will be purified, and anything that is of plastic will burn.
If I could high five you, I would have. That was
Because
really good.
we see so much of this now,
Yes.
where what is made of plastic is just getting completely annihilated. In the UK, we're talking about opening up again. And the UK's had no management plan for this. It's a total
Do you know what's
mess.
happening right now in the US at this moment? There's a big reopening in many areas, and there's spikes that are going up 900% with COVID.
Wow.
So, yeah,
We
there's a
just
lot
have
of
to
stuff
wait it
happening.
out.
A lot of stuff happening here.
We just have to wait it out. And this
Totally.
is again another like perspective that I like to teach from, is like, okay, we may live 90 years. I'm personally shooting for 115, but that's okay.
I like that
Um,
number.
um, but if we judge everything that we experience by that time frame, everything's pretty short. Whereas, what if we had the virtue of living for 3,000 years, and we look at what's happening now, and we look at what's happened over the past 100 years, and I can't do the viewing that you can at present. I hopefully will be able to, but I'm sure you would be able to see many years ahead from now.
Yes. I can see clear up until December 2021, down to the week. I've been accurate so far ever since January. I started getting downloads and started sharing the trends of how things are going to ebb and flow, and it's been coming true and accurate. Maybe I need to do a show just on that. Um,
That would be cool. If you're taking on students, let me know. I'd like to sign up. So,
oh, really? I would love to teach how I do it. It's really just reading. It's how do I do it? It's like I'm reading trends, but it's mostly I'm tapped into the collective consciousness, and I could feel the base. So I feel where people are a yes and where people are a no. The positive and negative. the plus, the 0 and the 1, right? So when you have a positive reaction, I feel that positive source energy. When I negative reaction, you feel that reverse. So I
Mm.
can feel where there is tension, and I can feel where it goes forward and where it goes back, and I feel when it starts building up. So there's lots of areas where it looks peaceful on the outside just for now, but there's a tension that's building
Yeah.
behind the walls, and pretty soon the walls will be knocked down. So we're way not out of the clear yet. We will not see any kind of normalcy until December of 2021. We are going to have a lot of roller coaster rides that are going to be happening of reopenings, then pulling back, and then reopenings and holiday time, and school's going to start, and that's going to be a complete mayhem. And you're going to see emotions just go out of control when you can't maybe act the way you normally are used to acting during holiday time with your family.
Mm.
This is going to change everything, and people are going to start talking different, and it's already started to happen where people are more interested in connecting with other people, and they genuinely very much feel more affinity towards one another in many ways. I mean, I know the news only will talk about, all the negative
Yeah.
behavior of people, but the majority of people I meet are just so happy to see another person and talk. And
Same. Like
good.
my interactions with other people has changed
Good.
drastically in that now
Mhm.
it feels like I'm interacting with people and the sort of people that I've always wanted to interact with.
Me
You know,
too.
we have these conversations like this. The group that you set up, it's quite a big part of my daily life now that
I love
I'll
that.
sign into Facebook, but I'll tend to just kind of go straight there,
It's so much.
see what's going on.
It's so
Sorry?
deep. It's so deep, and there's so much information. You can just keep digging and scrolling and digging. There's so much. We're up to
I
like 27,000 comments since May 12th.
I feel very privileged because while you live in California and there's members in Australia, I live right in the middle.
Yes,
So
you do.
I get the best of everything. So I'm
It's
kind of like there's
true.
always something new to check out or
I'm,
to ponder on or
I'm really grateful for the night owls, the people who have that like to stay up late, because then I can talk to them from around the
mm.
world, and the ones that are up at like 3, 4 in the morning, and then I can say hi and talk.
Yeah, because we usually tend to chat. I think it's usually like kind of around about 1 a.m. sort of my time.
Yeah, that's
And
when things are probably settling down for you, and you're starting to go into chill mode.
yeah,
What I wanted to ask you, Al, first of all, I was picking up on this talk of ours. This is endless. I mean, we have so much information we could share with each other, and I think it's super interesting. I think people would love to just listen and maybe have a cup of tea and or a coffee and just sit back and just kind of join us. And so maybe we can have this as a regular occurrence. Does that sound
100%.
that
I'm
sounds
up for
good?
that. Yep, definitely.
I mean,
Definitely. Let's.
if any of you out there have any questions or things you would like us to discuss or talk about or go deeper into, just leave it below in the comments, and we would be more than happy to talk about those topics. And we'll bring our show and tell, our books, and favorite movies and things that we recommend for you to also take a look at. But Al, is
Yeah.
there anything else that you would like to say as we wrap up?
No, because I think if we started talking about something else now, that'll be us for another 25 minutes.
Well,
Just thank you.
I'm going to leave it up to you. Would you please come up with a title for our show?
Okay, I will do. If you leave it with me, I'll think
Yes,
of something. We'll
yes.
swap some ideas over Facebook
Yes,
messages to me.
wonderful. Well,
All
everyone,
right.
thank you so much for your time, and hopefully you have a blessed day, and take yourself seriously, and take your breath seriously, and take light and source and energy and the sun seriously, and just let it all in and let it all out. And we're here to help you do that. So much love from this side of the world to yours. Namaste.
Namaste.